from the Bark and Branch Library, and welcome back to my kitchen. Our holiday baking series was so popular. Ashley and I were really excited to see how many of you enjoyed baking along with us. So we've decided to continue our baking series into 2021. So I'm going to kick us off this month, the month of January, with a Galaxy themed sugar cookie recipe. The recipe is pretty easy. It's pretty much like a basic sugar cookie recipe, and then the real magic comes from the decorations that you do to make it look like it's a galaxy with lots of stars and nebulas and that kind of fun stuff. So the recipe we're going to be doing today is from thethriftycouple.com. So let's go ahead and get started and I'll show you what you need. Alright, so here's the ingredients and equipment that you will need for this recipe. This is actually just for the first part of the actual sugar cookie dough. Later on I'll show you the ingredients and the equipment for the icing. So you will need either a stand mixer, hand mixer, or a whisk to do it by hand. Also, if you'd like, you need some kind of sifter. So I use just a fine mesh colander. If you have a real sifter, feel free to use that as well. Something to stir with, and then our ingredients. So for this recipe, you're gonna need 5 cups of flour, which we have right here. You're also gonna need 2 teaspoons of baking powder, which is right in here, along with 1 teaspoon of salt. Those are both here together. Then you're gonna also need 1.5 cups of soft unsalted butter that we have in this big bowl, and that's along with 2 cups of granulated sugar that are all together in this big bowl. You're also gonna need 4 eggs. Don't do cups, just do 4 eggs. And then also 1 teaspoon of vanilla right here. So we have the teaspoon here to measure it. Alrighty, let's get started. The first thing you're gonna wanna do is put the 2 cups of sugar and also the 1.5 cups of soft unsalted butter together. Make sure your butter is at room temperature for a little while before you do this, so it's soft and all ready to go. So go ahead and just put it in a bowl together, and then we're gonna cream it. So either cream it in your stand mixer with your hand mixer, or cream it by hand, which is a lot of work. So hopefully you have one of the other things. And we're just gonna cream it until it's nice and smooth and not grainy, and the sugar and butter are well incorporated together. To scrape down the sides of your bowl as it comes along. You can use a spatula for that if you want, a silicone spatula. I'm just kind of using my whisks. Alrighty, so here's what we have, and let's go ahead and move on to the next step. The next step is with our 4 eggs. So we're gonna go ahead and crack all of these eggs together into the bowl, and then once all 4 of them are in there together, we will mix them together. So let's go ahead and crack our 4 eggs. I have a trash can off screen. I'm not throwing them on the floor, I promise. Try not to get any shells in it like I just did. Even after my fun times with baking, I still get shells and things. But if you get any, you can just dig them out. It's okay. All right, we have 3. And 4. Okay, I'm just gonna rinse my hands off. And then go ahead and mix that all together again with your mixer until everything's well incorporated. toss away that shell that you found. You could make crunchy Galaxy cookies. You could say those are like the stars or the crunchy eggshells that you leave in it. Get creative with it. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add in the 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then we'll mix all of that together. To mention, this recipe should make about 24 cookies. The cookies are going to be pretty big because we want to make really cool galaxy and star scenes on them, but just so you know, they'll make some 24 pretty large cookies. Alrighty, so the next step is we are going to sift our dry ingredients together. So we're going to sift in the salt and the baking, is it baking powder? Yes, I don't want to say sugar. Salt and baking powder into the flour. And then we're going to take all of those ingredients with the flour included and we're going to sift it into our wet mixture here. We have our baking powder and our salt here, and we're going to go ahead and put them into our little sifter. If you don't have a sifter, this isn't something that will like ruin your recipe if you don't do it. It just gives a better texture to things and like makes the texture of your dry ingredients a little bit smoother as you put it into your wet. All right, so that's all sifted. And so now we're going to go ahead and sift all of these ingredients into here. Alrighty. So just do a little bit at a time. And it just makes it a finer mixture. Smoother texture, easier to mix together, that kind of stuff. It's really pretty at the bottom. I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. Mixed about half, and I'm actually going to start mixing the dry ingredients in with the wet just so it's a little bit easier to mix everything together. But you can see it's really pretty. It kind of looks like snow once it's all sifted. So I'm going to make a big old mess like I always do with dry ingredients and mix what we've already sifted into our wet. So right now we're just focusing on making the cookie dough, and actually this cookie dough does need about 6 hours or overnight in the fridge. So make sure you plan enough time for that. When we're done with the cookies too, they do need about an hour to dry with all of the beautiful icing decorations that we make. So just plan ahead with your time if you want to make these for something special. I'm just making them to eat. All right, so it doesn't have to be perfectly mixed the first time since we have more wet ingredients, but that'll just help us with the mixing process. So I'm gonna go ahead and sift the rest of our dry ingredients. Make another little snow pile. All right, so now we're just gonna keep doing what we are doing. We're gonna mix our dry and our wet together, and this time we do wanna make sure it's all thoroughly mixed because this is going to be our cookie dough that we're going to chill in the fridge. And for this, I'm just using a plastic spatula, silicone spatula, because they're really nice and easy to work with and mix everything together, but feel free to use your hands or wooden spoon, whatever you like to mix with. wrap or plastic wrap, and then we have our lovely ball of dough. It's a pretty wet recipe, so it might not be a perfectly formed ball, but just something where it can come all together. And it's heavy too. All right, here it comes. Let me just scrape the bottom. Alrighty. So now, you can also use the saran wrap to kind of help form the ball. So I'm just gonna kind of like bring it together and squeeze it into more of a ball form. If I have enough saran wrap, I might need to grab some more. Okay, that's all right. Let me grab a little bit more. All right, let me just pack all that. Make sure it's all sealed, and then kind of squish it into a ball. It's pretty fun to play with. Okay, so there's our cookie dough. So it needs to go into the fridge and chill either for 6 hours or overnight. I'm gonna leave it overnight. So just be sure, however long you leave it for, that you give it enough time when we pull it out to kind of warm up so we can start manipulating it, and we will cut it into cookies. We will bake those cookies, and then we will decorate those cookies to be beautiful. So I will see you after this has rested overnight. Welcome back. So for you, it's just been a couple of seconds, but for me, it's been quite a long time. So I've left the dough in the fridge overnight, and now we are going to roll out the dough and cut our cookies. You do want to preheat your oven to 325. I've already done that before I started recording. So go ahead and preheat your oven before you get started with this step. And for this step, you just need a couple of things. You of course need some cookie cutters. Metal or plastic will work. And it says in the recipe to do a circle shape. I just grabbed a star shape too because I thought it would be fun to do stars that are also at galaxies. So we'll do a combination of a circle and a star. There's also smaller ones. So you could do smaller ones like this size. This is more the standard cookie size. The only thing is that we're going to be decorating quite a lot on these cookies. So I chose the bigger cookie cutters because it gives me more room to decorate. Spoiler alert, I'm not the best with decorating with frosting yet. I'm still learning that. So the more room that I can give myself to kind of experiment and play around with decorating, the better. So I'm going to do the really big size, but feel free to do a smaller one if you prefer a smaller cookie. The other things you're going to need are a metal turner spatula kind of thing. If you were one of the people to get our holiday baking kit, that is what this is from. So pull this out from your holiday kit to go back in December. This dough is really wet, so you're going to want to use this instead of some kind of other spatula if you can, just to make sure you're getting all of the wet dough up and off of the counter that we're going to be rolling it out on. You also want a rolling pin, and then lots of flour, because as I mentioned, it's a wet dough and your dough. So go ahead and start by very liberally coating your surface in flour. And then also we'll do our rolling pin. And we might have to kind of add more as we go. We'll see how the dough does. All right. And this is a gigantic thing of dough. I should probably push this way out because I have a feeling this is going to be the entire counter. This thing is heavy. You could use it for some exercise if you wanted to. All right. So let's pull out our dough. And that is telling me that my oven is preheated, so that's perfect. It's kind of like doing surgery, trying to find all the places where you've wrapped plastic around it. All right, and there it is. You know what? I think I'm actually gonna just take a chunk because I know this is a lot of dough. So I think I'm just gonna take about half of it to show you how to roll it out, because otherwise we'll be here all day if I roll out all of it. All right, that's about half. Let's start with that. Of course, you might also want to do that if you have limited space in your kitchen, just because it's a lot of dough. So feel free if you need to roll it out into sections, or you have limited amounts of cookie sheets. Maybe you want to roll it out in half like I'm doing and then grab the other half. So the only thing with that is we gotta kind of bring it all together again. Okay, and now let's go ahead and roll it out. All right, so that looks about even. You want to make sure you just have a kind of an even thickness going all the way around. And the other thing you're going to need is a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper if you have it. Fun fact, I learned this from a baking fail. Parchment paper and wax paper are not the same thing. So do not use wax paper or you're gonna have a sad melted mess. So if you have parchment paper, use that because that's definitely the best to line your cookie sheets with to work with a wet dough like this. If you don't, I would suggest wrapping your cookie sheets in foil and then spraying the foil with Pam or that kind of like cooking spray and coating the foil that way. But I do have parchment paper right here on my cookie sheet. So just make sure you have that ready to go before you start cutting. And let's start cutting out our cookies. Let's start with a big giant circle. Another thing that's really helpful as you're going, use some of the flour that you have on here and kind of coat your cookie cutter in it every time. So you get some flour around the edges. That'll help it not stick when you're pushing it into the dough. My mom always taught me with doing cookies that you should try to use as much of the space as you can and really kind of like fit the cookies in there so you're not wasting any of this edge dough. So I'm sorry, Mom, if you're seeing this. I started in a bad spot and I wasted the ends here. But I'm gonna go ahead and put these on the cookie sheet so you can see what they look like. And then if we have room on that cookie sheet, I'll roll this out again and use that leftover dough. This is where our very trusty metal spatula cookie turner is gonna work really well. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab the first cookie. Make sure you got all of it. And plunk it onto your cookie sheet. Get off, little cookie. If it's gonna come off. There you go. Okay, you didn't see that. That was off screen. What I had to do is I had to take it and then kind of flip it so it would fall out off of it because this is really wet too. So let's try actually, I'm gonna put some flour on the actual spatula. See if that helps with the wetness of the dough. It's kind of like the dough I always work with. It's one way or the other. Gingerbread one was too dry, remember that. This one is super wet, but that's okay as long as you figure out ways to fix that and things to use. There we go. Okay, so that's a good hack I just figured out. Coat your metal spatula cookie turner in some flour, and then you shouldn't have to flip it all kinds of ways to get the cookie off. All right, here are our beautiful cookies all done on the parchment paper. So these, like we mentioned before, are very big. So it looks like about 6 will take up a normal cookie sheet. So be prepared to either bake a lot or use lots of cookie sheets. So I'm actually going to wait until these are free, and then I will bake the rest of this dough and then that dough. So I would say if this is half, probably 4 cookie sheets worth of cookies with 6 on them each. because they are giant and I'm really excited to eat them. It's like one cookie is like the whole dessert. I like that. So now you're gonna put it into your oven. So it should be preheated at 325 and you're gonna bake these for 8 minutes. And while your cookies are baking, if you want to, like me, you could roll out more of the dough and do another sheet if you're gonna do more. But before we make the icing and everything, we do want our cookies to cool absolutely completely. So I would say you could make your icing now if you wanted to, but since it's such a short baking time, I would actually say wait to bring your cookies out and put them on the wire rack, and then we'll make the icing because that'll hopefully give them some more time to cool off before we decorate. So these cookies poof up a lot and get even bigger, both width and lengthwise. So one thing you might want to do is take a toothpick and when your 8 minutes is up, give them a poke right in the center where they're thickest and make sure there's not still raw dough. So it says to make sure the cookies are cooked thoroughly. That's how I make sure things are cooked completely. So these have actually been in for about nine-ish minutes, a little bit longer because they were still looking not done at first. So if you need them to go a little bit longer, 9 or 10 minutes is probably also fine. And this is how they will look. One of them will have a little poked hole in the center, but that's okay because we'll cover that up with delicious icing. So go ahead and use your cookie turner again and put these onto a wire rack to dry or to cool completely. And we will be back with the icing. So here's what you're gonna need for the icing, the ingredients and the equipment. For equipment, you're going to need, again, that hand mixer, stand mixer, a whisk if you have to, but you are going to be whisking for 4 straight minutes, so pace yourself if you're doing it by hand. A big bowl to mix everything in. Then you're going to want 3 separate other bowls. We're going to be dividing the icing up and making different colors, so make sure you just have some containers to put each of the separate icing chunks where we're going to change colors. And then a spoon to mix the colors and then to also divide it out and then mix it in the bowls. For ingredients, you're going to need 2 egg whites, which we have right here. Very important. Try really, really hard not to get any yolk in the egg whites because we want it to get light and fluffy. You also need 1 cup of powdered sugar. Later on, if the icing is too thin, you might need to add 1/4 of a cup of powdered sugar. So make sure you have 1 cup and 1/4 on hand. And then you're gonna need 1/2 teaspoon of cream of tartar. This is a thickening agent, easy to find along with the spices. And then you're going to need your gel food coloring, which is the most fun part. So you're gonna want a black, a blue, and a pink. Unless you want your galaxies to look different, you could do some greens, some oranges, make some cool other colored nebulas. But the recipe is for blue, black, and pink. Now the thing with gel food coloring, I'm actually pretty new to using it. Gel food coloring is better for baking because it doesn't change the consistency of things. If you only have liquid food coloring and that's all you have, you can go ahead and use that, but you might need to add more powdered sugar because it's going to make your frosting thinner and a little bit wetter. Gel food coloring, if you can get it, is really awesome because you don't have to do anything different with the texture because adding the food coloring doesn't change the texture at all. And they're pretty easy to find in most grocery stores, and I actually ordered these online, so they're not expensive at all either. So just so you know, if you enjoy baking, just invest in some gel food coloring because that'll be better for you in the long run. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the icing. So it's actually pretty easy to make icing. All you're going to do is take all of the ingredients except for your food coloring, put them in together and mix them up. So it's easy to do, but it does take a little bit of time. We're gonna be mixing, like I mentioned, for about 4 minutes to get that icing texture. So go ahead and put in your cup of powdered sugar and your 1/2 teaspoon of cream of tartar. No matter what icing recipe you use, you're usually always going to use powdered sugar. That's the magic behind icing. And if you're like me, oh, sorry about that. I'm baking another set of cookies in the oven. Sorry for that brief interruption. I was just pulling the other cookies out of the oven. That beeped. So I put all the ingredients into our bowl. So now we're going to mix it for 4 minutes to make our icing. is to divide up this icing into fourths. So we're going to have 1/4 in each of these and then keep 1/4 still in the mixing bowl. And then we are going to dye 3 of them, and we will leave the one in the mixing bowl white because we also want white frosting for our stars. So that looks to be about 1/4 divided up between all 4 bowls. It doesn't have to be exactly precise, just get it as good as you can. And let's go ahead and add our food coloring. So the other really cool thing about gel icing is that it lasts you usually a bit longer than normal icing because you don't need very much to get good vibrant colors. So let's start with our pink. I'm just gonna do 2 drops of each one to start, and we will see how good that looks. Of course, you can always add more if you want to, but yeah, gel food coloring is usually very vibrant with just a little bit. So we have our plain pink, our blue, and our black, and we'll leave white in the mixing bowl. Come on, black. Okay, and make sure you wash this spoon in between each time of mixing so you don't get any of your colors messed up. Let's start with our pink. This is one of my favorite colors. I love a good vibrant pink, or a light pink, a hot pink, any pinks and purples. And see, that's just 2 drops, and look how cool that's looking already. I can't decide. I do want the pink to be lighter than the blues and the blacks. So I think I might leave it this hot pink color just so it kind of stands out against the other dark colors. The other thing you might want that I forgot to mention, you might want to grab a rubber spatula if you have it. Grab the rubber spatula to get the pink off of or any color off of your spoon. And then also you're going to want it when we put it into our piping bags. And it's time for all my blue fans out there. Let's get a beautiful blue. Again, you could do this with other colors if you're not fans of pinks and blues. Do some greens, some oranges, some purples, some yellows. That would be really cool to add some yellow. Or if you are a master at icing and decorating, feel free to add more colors if you feel confident with that and have enough room on your cookie. And I feel like I'm going to use 1 more drop. I want this to be a little bit darker than the pink. Not as dark as the black, but I do want it to be a little bit more of a dark blue and not so much of like a baby blue. I'm looking at my picture too, my reference picture. I think that's about good. All right, and now for the grand finale, let's do our black. This one we will want to be really dark, like the black of the galaxy. So this is looking a little gray. I'm probably gonna add a couple more drops just to get that nice black color. It probably will stain the inside of your mouth too. Be warned. But it'll be so fun to eat, you won't even mind. All right, we're getting there. I think I'm gonna add a couple more. We still have kind of a gray-brown going on. I bet that will do it. There we go. That's looking nice and dark. Should we go even darker? Should we do one more? Let's go for it. So that is, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I added 8 drops, 6 to 8 drops to get a nice vibrant black. Black and purples are always the hardest to achieve with cooking, or with baking. They're always the hardest colors to get to look just right. So feel free to play around with it as much as you need. And it might still have a little bit, it still has a little bit of a purpley tinge to it, but I think that that is looking good with the rest of our color scheme. Now I apologize, I forgot to mention 2 very important pieces of equipment earlier when we were talking about the equipment ingredients. The first one is toothpicks. You're definitely going to want some toothpicks because that's how we're going to kind of pull the icing along on the surface of the cookie and make a cool looking nebula. So make sure you have lots of toothpicks available. And the other thing is icing bags. So the recipe calls for an icing bag with a number 5 tip. If you have that, go for it. I have some icing bags, but I don't have the right tip. So I wanted to show you all a little life hack if you don't have icing bags on hand, so you don't have to rush out to the store. You can just use plastic bags, just like a normal gallon Ziploc kind of bag, and you're just gonna cut the end, one of these ends right here, really, really tiny, and that way it'll kind of be like your icing tip. These probably won't be the most beautiful Galaxy cookies in the world, partly because I'm using this instead of a real icing tip and bag, and partly because I'm still new at decorating. So don't feel bad, just try and get the tip as tiny as you can, get the smallest opening at the edge of your bag. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll fill this up with one of them and then I'll cut the end to show you what it looks like. So let's go ahead and start with, you can also flip it inside out like that, to kind of help you get down to the bottom when you're filling it. Make sure you get all the creases out. So it should look something like that where you have it folded over. Let's start with the white because the white is the least scary to get in there. If you have a buddy, this would be a great time to say, buddy, come here, come hold this icing bag while I put it in. And again, using the rubber spatula will probably be easier if you can versus just a normal spoon. It just kind of grabs things better off the surface of the bowl. Then the other thing you can do once you have it and you have your rubber spatula kind of covered in icing, so you can grab the bag, hopefully you can see that, grab the outside of the bag and then kind of pull the spatula and get all the icing off of it inside of the bag. And then you flip it up like this and try to squish it to the corner that you want. If you have smaller gallon bags too, that might, or not gallon bags, but smaller plastic bags, that might work better because this isn't a ton of icing. And I kind of have a ways to go with putting it in and then pushing it down. But it works out. It's better than getting in your car and driving to Walmart when you're already almost done with the recipe. I've definitely had that before. Okay, so that's kind of what it should look like. We still have some icing up here, but we'll squeeze it down as we go. It's all there in that corner where we're gonna cut the tip off. And then as you fold it and close it like normal, just make sure you're getting all the air out of it. Ta-da! And then the way you'll hold it is you'll kind of crunch over these other sides, squish everything down some more, and ta-da! And then you can cut your tip. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of the colors in these, and then we'll come back to cut them and decorate our cool cookies. Okay, so here comes the fun part, and the part I'm a little nervous for because I'm still new to decorating with icing. So what we're going to do is we are going to start by doing a black line around here, then a blue line, not quite in the center, but closer to the center of the cookie, then a pink line in between the black and the blue, and then a white dot in the middle. And then we're going to use our toothpick to kind of drag it out and make it look like a nebula. And then we'll put little white stars on top. So as we go along, you might find, depending on how big you cut your tip, or if you're using the number 5 tip, you might just want to do one line of black or one line of each color, but you might need a little bit more depending on how big your cookies are as well. So I'm going to start with our black. I'm going to try to cut the littlest tip I can. Okay, and let's do the outside in black. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna make it look all cool and squiggly as we go along. So I think I probably will do one more line of black. You could also just start with one line and then kind of fill it in with the colors you want as you go. I think I'll do one more though. Okay, woohoo! Looks pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with myself. All right, so the next one is the blue. If you are doing other colors, I still think you should probably start with the black around the outside, because that'll make it look like a galaxy behind the nebula, all the darkness with the stars. If you hear that, that's Princess scratching on the carpet. She's very upset that she didn't get featured in the beginning of this video. Aren't you, Princess? Oh, and she's not speaking to me. Okay, 2 circles of blue. I think I'm gonna need to add more blue and black because that's gonna be a lot of pink. But let's go with the pink. Let's do 2 circles and we'll see where we're at. There she talks. I think I'm going to do the second line closer to the blue because I think I want more black. All right, I'm going to do, I know. I'm going to do one more black line. Fill in the gaps I'm finding. And then I think I'm going to do one more pink and then one more blue in the center. Something else, I think I accidentally told you that it only took about an hour for the frosting to dry for the decorations. And when I was rereading before we started today, I realized it says 5 to 10 hours, which is very different than 1 hour. So make sure you give yourself enough time for these to dry completely. There is quite a bit of frosting on them, so if you want them for like an event or a birthday, just make sure you give them enough time to dry for 5 to 10 hours. And I'm just kind of creatively making decisions. I might try something fun with some of the other ones. So this is how the directions say to do it. I might do one that has the colors switch, so I'll do the blue and pink differently. I might try one where there's like a lot of blue and not so much pink, and then a reverse. But this one I'm just trying with all of it kind of even. I'm going to do a little bit more blue. Okay, now let's add our white in the center. Oh, it's not cut yet. That would be a problem. Don't do that. Make sure it's cut or else you'll be very sad when it explodes. I think there's a little bit of air in this one too. There we go. Alrighty. And if there's a little bit of gaps, that's okay. Because we're going to drag it along and kind of fill in those gaps. So let's try this together, shall we? I think I'm going to go this way and drag it outwards toward the galaxy. Make some fun little, ooh, I got some black in there, that's okay. This would be also really fun. I feel like these cookies are easy enough that your kiddos could help decorate them. Make some really cool, fun shapes. Let's go in on this side just to see what happens. You can make sound effects. Sound effects are actually necessary. Kind of looks like a tie-dye effect is what it reminds me of. I'm gonna go along here and fill in those gaps. And then fill along the gaps here. And maybe you want to flip your toothpick, so if you don't want to be pulling up that extra color and you're more exact with it and you just want to pull in that black. I'm going to wash this off actually and dry it if I can. And keep going. Oops. That's looking pretty cool. And I'm going to drag some more because I feel like my white is getting lost, so I'm going to drag some white out. This also reminds me of if you've never ever done water marbling. Do you remember that with your nails? Gives that kind of effect too. Okay, I don't think that's too bad for my first one. I think that looks pretty cool. So what makes it a little bit more look like a galaxy too is we're going to add little stars. So I'm going to do some dots. And if you have some bigger dots, I'm going to add some little ones and then some bigger ones. So little dots. I think the next time what I'll do is probably add more black so it looks more like a galaxy and less like just tie-dye. But if you want to do a bigger one like this one I have here, you could also make it look like a star. You do a bigger dot and then you kind of drag one way and drag the other way. That doesn't look as much like a star as I was hoping. Let's try that again. That's a fun thing. You can just keep adding more frosting. Eventually you'll run out of room, but instead of dragging down, I think what I need to do is drag out and drag out. Can kind of make it look like a little diamond star. I think I'm going to add a couple more dots. And that looks pretty cool. I think if you close your eyes and squint, that can almost look like a galaxy, right? I think that's pretty cool for my first time, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and decorate some more so you can see some other things. I'm going to try some more black on the next one to see if it looks a little bit more like a galaxy and less like tie-dye. And then I'm going to try some other color combinations, and I will show you them on screen when I'm done. I have had way too much fun decorating these along with my husband for like the past half hour. So here's the beautiful product of all of our hard work. It was really fun. We kind of experimented with different color schemes, different patterns, different ways of dragging the toothpick along, and it turned out really, really fun. So we have some that look more like galaxies. We have some that kind of look tie-dye. We have some that are just complete abstract art, but that's the fun thing with baking. You know, as long as it comes out edible, there's really no right or wrong. It's fun, especially with a design like this, to do it with your kids, with family and friends, and just have some creativity and fun with it. I think my favorite one is probably this one that I did. This one looks the most like a galaxy, and it has those stars that I was trying to show you how to do where you pull the corners and make it kind of like a star. So that one was really fun. We also did one that's just totally different. We decided to go for a reverse galaxy where it's white and then black stars. We did a spiral galaxy. This one looks pretty cool too. So lots of fun, lots of different things to try. Try different techniques with the toothpicks. Maybe try different things instead of toothpicks. See what happens if you use like fork tongs and stuff like that, and just have a lot of fun with it because we definitely did. It was a lot of fun. A couple notes, since we did the cookies so large because I wanted a lot of decorating room, if you do that like I did where you have a larger cookie, you might want to cut the recipe for the cookies in half just because the icing wouldn't have covered all the cookies. I still have some dough left over. So if you want more decorating room, keep the icing recipe the same, but just cut the cookies in half. Otherwise, you could do smaller cookies, and I think the icing and the cookie ratio should work out just fine with following the recipe as is. So these are going to dry for 5 to 10 hours, and I'm really excited to eat them and eat a Galaxy, and I hope that you enjoy it as well. All right, thanks so much for joining me again, and next month will be Ashley baking something for Mardi Gras, so look forward to that. And as always, please post on our Facebook and show us what you've made with this recipe. We'd love to see all your creations. Okay, until next time, I'll see you later.